they were educated people, but not upper class people. Very Western, middle class, like that. My mother was proud of the fact that they had a toilet in their house because some of their neighbors did not. That side of the family was interested in social justice. My grandfather editorialized against Japanese concentration camps during World War II and visited people in them and got some of the young people out of the camps and into universities in the Midwest, things like that. My mother ended up my mother put herself through school, San Jose State, during the war, right after the war, and ended up teaching Mexican-American kids in San Jose at the time when they were, migrant farm labor, basically. So that was her. On my father's side, he was also the son of a contractor who had gone boom and bust a number of times during Depression. My father dropped out of school when he was 16 years old in order to, he lied about his age, joined the Carpenters Union, and traveled the East Coast with his father working on WPA projects during the Depression, and then ended up going to college at San Jose State on GI Bill after World War II. My father, when I was 5 years old, he had worked for a lot of other construction companies. He had an engineering degree. Very smart man, but also the adult child of an alcoholic, probably an alcoholic himself. Had a terrible temper. But was very smart and did not like working for other people, probably because he couldn't be in control. And so he quit his job when I was 5 years old and started a construction company in our garage with $1,000 in one pickup truck. And from that, over 40 years' time, ended up creating this incredible company that was really the premier construction company in Northern California and remained privately held up until 2005. So, I didn't really like him. He wasn't a nice person to live with. He's very difficult. And when I was 18, I went off to college. And I grew up in Los Altos, born in San Jose, but grew up in Los Altos. And in the 60s, in 1971, I went off to Tacoma to go to school. And my idea of a good life was to be a social activist. And, I just thought that looked like so much fun, And even in high school, I was like cutting class to go over to Stanford and be involved in protests at Stanford. And they were so fun. We had such a good time. It was so romantic and sexy, and we were just having a good time. So when I went to college, that's what I did. I would always go to school and I would get okay grades, but I was spending all my time and energy and focus on these different social movements. Got involved in the feminist movement, which I loved. I ended up going to Seattle, and I ended up teaching women's studies at the University of Washington in my 20s, along with other social activist stuff. I can't go into much about this, but, and the main thing about what that has to do with money is that that's what I wanted to do. I wasn't really interested in making money. I wanted to pay the rent, and have a car that, worked. And that was pretty much it. So I wasn't interested. I was interested in all sorts of things, but not in making money. So I went and lived in the ghetto in Seattle, in a really dangerous neighborhood. Managed to survive it fine. And the reason I did that was because I figured, you either, when it comes to money, you either have to, kind of want, you can make more money or you can have less needs. Or maybe both at the same time. So I thought, well, the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to have less needs. So I'm gonna prove to myself that I can live really cheap, and that way then I have the freedom to do what I want to do in life because it doesn't take very much work for wages to survive. So that's what I did during my 20s. One of the things I did was I got involved in a case, prison case of a Native American man, actually 2 Native American men who were accused of killing a guard in Walla Walla prison. And one of them was innocent, and it was this long case, and it was a big political case, and we had a famous lawyer, Lenny Weinglass, became the lawyer on the case, and I ran the defense committee, and we were able to prove that Jimmy Simmons, one of the men, Indian men, was innocent. And after that, we fell in love with each other and got married. Not got married much later, but we fell in love with each other. And when he got out of prison, we moved back to California together. Okay, so I'm still in, and that all, there's a movie about it. If you're interested, called Making the River. You can go on the internet and find out about that movie that tells that whole story. So
Making the River.
Making the River. So we came back to California, and I was still in that mode of, let's figure out how to live cheap. Because what we still want to do is be social activists, which we were, the 2 of us together, and we had really a good time doing that. We lived up in the mountains for a year, up at Bear Valley, right when he got out of prison. And eventually we came down to the valley here, where I had grown up, and we didn't want to live in the mountains anymore. And we just needed jobs. We needed jobs. I tried to get a job teaching women's studies at a college or university, but the market was kind of flooded because everybody wants to live in the Bay Area, so there was tons of women with as much experience as I had. And so we went to my father, who had this construction company, and we said, can you give us jobs? So I got hired as a secretary, and my husband got hired as a laborer, construction laborer. And we lived in the barrio in Mountain View. In this historically little, I still drive by there, and it's always so cute, it's such a romantic little place. Is that 10 minutes? Okay. Oh dear, I'm going to have to go over a little. So we started working for the company. Now, I never thought that company was going to be my career. I wasn't all that interested in what they were doing, and I did not have the skills or the credentials or the education that I thought was needed in a construction company. It was clear that my older brother, because of primogeniture, the oldest son, everything, that he was going to take over the company. He was going to be the president eventually, and that's how it was. At one point, my father asked me, what were my goals in the company, and I said, well, gee, I'd like to be in management, upper management someday, and he said, no way, the men in the company will never accept you. So that was it. There was also a lot of other things that were situations where my father's partner, they had a buy-sell agreement, and it was clear legally that if my father died first, his partner would end up with the company, and we would be fired from it. Wow. And then so there was just all these things that I saw as barriers. I wasn't an engineer, that I saw barriers to my role there. But what I started to do was I started to notice that because so many of the people in the company were the same kind of people, which basically was men engineers, there were a lot of holes in the company of things that weren't done and weren't taken care of because none of these men was interested in taking care of them. Things like training, things like, human resources, making sure that people weren't being discriminated against for sex or race, things about mediation, different things like that. And so every time